Welcome to Live the Upstander Life, Creating a Culture of Consent, Part 2, Case Scenarios. Before we go through today's scenario, we want to preface that the purpose of the following case scenario is to foster awareness about being an upstander for all Stanford community members. In the case scenario, we're explicit in naming the identities of the individuals because we aim to analyze how issues of power, privilege, and oppression operate as they relate to intervention. We want to be clear that we are not naming these identities to further perpetuate harmful stereotypes. By making these identities more explicit, our goal is to start a conversation around issues of power and present situations in a more realistic manner. We also want to note that no individual scenario can take into account the full complexity of the social stratification that reflects the realities of each individual and situation. We recognize that these scenarios are limited because they may or may not include certain identities or include specific experiences. However, we hope that by taking all of these upstander scenarios together, this series of videos can contribute to a certain extent to a more comprehensive understanding of how systems of oppression can influence upstanding. So my name is Nadia Kali. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Education and Outreach Specialist in the Shared Title IX office.
My name is Georgia Sasso. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a student staff in the Share Title IX Education Office. We are part of the Share Education team. SHARE stands for Sexual Harassment, Assault Response, and Education. At Share Ed, our vision is that we believe in communities where everyone is empowered to express themselves and have caring relationships. We work towards our vision through our everyday mission to empower the Stanford community and end sexual and relationship violence, stalking, gender discrimination, and sexual harassment through collaborative healing, education, activism, response, and transformation, otherwise known as HEART. To learn more, visit our website, share.stanford.edu. Before we get started, we wanted to acknowledge that these scenarios discuss issues of racism, homophobia, sexism, gender discrimination, and sexual harassment and assault, which can cause discomfort and distress to many. We want to provide resources that you can use during and after this workshop. For support, you can visit sexualviolenceupport.stanford.edu, relationshipviolencesupport.stanford.edu, transgendersupport.stanford.edu, or yourywca.stanford.edu. For general information on updates and policies, you can visit sexualrespect.stanford.edu and Stanford Admin Guide 1.7.1 if you are unsure where to start. The confidential support team and ombudsperson are two confidential resources that are always a great place to begin. The confidential support team are licensed therapists who specialize in providing trauma-informed care to anyone impacted by sexual and relationship violence and gender discrimination. And the ombudsperson is a general resource for any concerns that you may wish to discuss.
Now let's do a quick recap of the Upstander Life model in more detail. Specifically, to live the upstander life, we must recognize that violence is a spectrum of daily acts of harm and high-risk situations, and that all violence is interconnected. To help us do so, we created the life model that recognizes the unique barriers that each person faces when it comes to upstanding. To clarify, the objective of the life model is to motivate upstanding, as opposed to being rigid checkboxes to follow that may act as a barrier to intervening. The priority of being an upstander should be intervening when possible, not necessarily hitting every point of the model. However, by practicing how to use the life model, we hope that the life process helps you to be more comfortable to effectively intervene whenever you need to. Let's discuss the first step of life, which is to take the lead and notice the situation. In order for us to notice the situations that warrant intervention, we need to notice behaviors that conflict with our personal values and communal norms that cultivate a community of care. At Stanford, these explicit values are established through policies and statements, like the Title IX prohibited sexual conduct. We may also have personal values, such as integrity, trust, and safety. Or you may have community norms established in your dorm, student organization, or group, like respect, equity, and love. So when situations occur that do not align with these values and norms, we can notice and be more inclined to take the lead. Take a moment to reflect on some personal and communal values that come to mind. The second step of intervention in life is to take your identities into account when interpreting the situation as problematic. According to research, people interpret situations through their worldviews. Worldviews are like a pair of lenses that we each have. Each lens is unique to our identities, beliefs, and experiences. Take a moment to reflect on the unique lens that you use to perceive the world around you. How do your lens influence whether or not you perceive a situation as problematic?
The third step is to tap into your feelings and assume personal responsibility. Sometimes, even when we interpret a situation as problematic in step 2 of life, we may not assume personal responsibility. That is why it's so helpful that we all have deep-seated intuition that typically shows up in our emotional responses. These emotional responses illuminate whether our needs are satisfied or are not satisfied. Can you recall a situation where you felt angry, sad, frustrated, or hurt? What was the need underneath that emotion that was not satisfied? When we tune into our feelings to understand our needs, we can be more motivated to take action, which leads me to our next step. For the next step, we evaluate the situation to know what to do and to intervene safely. Based on the situation and your personal safety, here are 4 strategies called the 4 Ds that you can use to intervene. You can use all 4 or pick and choose what works best for you. The first is direct. Assess safely and directly intervene by placing yourself into the situation. The second is distract, creating a distraction to cause one or more of the people to disengage from the situation. The third is delegate. Tell another person or resource who can help you to intervene. Delay, and the fourth is delay. After the incident, check in with the person who you were concerned about.
Now let's apply what we learned to one scenario. As a content warning, this scenario contains themes of harassment, homophobia, and power imbalances. So the people or characters involved in this scenario are John and Marco. John is in his last year of his doctorate and is an advisor to younger graduate students. He is a white man and identifies as gay. Marco is a first-year graduate student working in the same lab as you. He is a Latino first-gen student and identifies as bisexual, but is only out to a few close friends. And now here's the scenario. You are in your first year of graduate school and are given a new job working in a biology lab. You really admire your advisor, John, and are really excited to work with him and other graduate students. On your first day, you meet your coworker, Marco, and get along with him very well. However, during your first week, you notice John being extra attentive to Marco and even making inappropriate comments about his body. For example, when he enters the room on Wednesday, the first thing he does is look Marco up and down and says things like, "Looking good today, Marco." On another occasion, John is reviewing Marco's work and seems to intentionally grab Marco's bicep and say, "Have you been going to the gym?" You notice that Marco turns red whenever John makes these comments and does not respond. This kind of behavior goes on for a couple of weeks, so you decide to ask Marco if he's okay in private. He discloses to you that he's really uncomfortable with the way John treats him, but he can't afford to lose this job, and he's afraid that John may try to retaliate and out Marco to others. At this point, please pause the video and take a few minutes to go through the life model. As a reminder, you first lead by noticing the situation, then you interpret your identities and lenses, then you pay attention to your feelings and needs to create a response, and then finally, you evaluate using the 4 Ds, which are direct, distract, delegate, and delay.
We will now go through an example of how we use the life model in this scenario. However, there is no one correct way, as the life model is very particular to each person. You first lead by noticing the situation. In order for us to notice the situation, I need to notice behaviors that conflict with our Stanford communal norm of safety and consent, which is defined as freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. I also noticed that this situation may go against the Title IX policy that prohibits sexual harassment, defined as unwelcome sexual advances and other visual, verbal, or physical conduct of a sexual nature when the conduct has the purpose or effect of interfering with an individual's academic performance or creating an intimidating or hostile academic or student living environment. This scenario may go against certain graduate lab policies and norms against harassment. Next, I should be mindful of the ways I am interpreting the situation through the lens of my identities. Given that I really admire John and am excited to work with him, I may assume positive intent from his actions and not recognize the concerning harassment at play. Furthermore, I may also be scared of getting on John's bad side, which could result in negative consequences for my professional career. As a result, I might be cautious about speaking up to help Marco. Next, it is important to tune into your feelings and thereby needs to then assume personal responsibility. This is also an opportunity to acknowledge any barriers you may have. When reading this scenario, I feel worried for Marco's safety and work experience, with our both being affected due to John's unwelcome behavior. I am also concerned that John will retaliate and out Marco, or fire either or both of us if we approach him or his supervisor. Keeping this in mind, I want to evaluate how to intervene. Remember the 4 Ds of intervention, which are direct, distract, delegate, and delay, which gives us options to intervene while keeping safety and other barriers in mind.
In this scenario, we found it appropriate to group distract and delegate together. In any case, you can always combine the 4 Ds as you see fit. Following the direct and delegate strategies, you can first check in with Marco to see how he's doing. You can also take notes of the different things John has said to Marco over a period of time. After talking to Marco and making sure he's okay with this, you can both go talk to John's supervisor and express your concerns about the situation, showing them the proof of what you've collected. If Marco doesn't want to come, and with Marco's consent, you can talk to John's supervisor on your own. You can make sure to point out the specific power imbalances that exist between John and Marco. As Marco's advisor, John can have a large influence on Marco's future. He's also especially powerful in this situation because he has the ability to out Marco to his family and friends if he gets upset. He also knows that Marco needs this job to be able to attend grad school, and Marco's status as a first-gen student makes him more unlikely to risk losing his place at school. You can point all these things out to express the urgency of the situation and the need for John's supervisor to address things immediately. For the distract strategy, in order to give you more time to think about what you can do next and to prevent John from making any comments towards Marco, you can immediately cause a distraction right when John comes in. For example, you can ask him about how his weekend was or something else meant to get him to engage in a conversation with you. Remember, this is an opportunity to be creative with your distraction. For the delay strategy, use this intervention strategy if you didn't have the chance to do anything in the moment. It's never too late to be an upstander. So, for example, if unfortunately you aren't able to address the situation and Marco decides to quietly quit the job, you want to make sure that this behavior does not continue. So you decide to talk to John's supervisor and express your concerns about why you think Marco left the position. Additionally, you reach out to Marco and see how you can support him. You suggest that he reaches out to a confidential counseling services to talk about his experiences, like While in Health initiative here at Stanford. You can also offer to help him find a new job and reach out to the career office so he doesn't have to drop out of grad school.
Thank you for going through this scenario with us. If you have any questions or would like to provide any feedback on this video, see the contact information above, and to continue practicing living the upstander life. Want more opportunities to practice upstanding? Check out our other upstander scenario videos on our website, which can be seen on the corner of your screen.